poppin', A-Push comrades? Today we're going to be tackling the state of the economy in the 1950s.
So the 50s were a decade marked by unprecedented economic growth due to World War II.
The gross domestic product, or the total value of the goods and services produced by a country in a year, actually grew by 150% from 1945 to 1960 due to the increased manufacturing.
To put this in perspective, while we only had 5% of the world's population, we were producing almost half of all manufactured products. Of course, since so many people were working, union membership peaked in 1954 with 35% of the workforce.
Even though manufacturing was booming, there was an overall shift from blue to white-collar work, with more focus on services instead of goods.
Job benefits and stable careers also contributed to the growing middle class. However, many family farmers were left behind as corporate consolidation took over their markets.
Just like the Gilded Age and the Roaring Twenties, new corporate conglomerates formed in all areas, even if they didn't make much sense.
Right, just like how international telephone and telegraph companies acquired hotels, bakeries, and insurance companies.
Additionally, franchises popped up more and more often, just like the first McDonald's opened in 1955. Aside from the drastic increase in manufacturing, the GI Veterans Bill, general Cold War spending, and the post-war baby boom bolstered the economy greatly.
The baby boom is probably something you've heard about when you hear about the 50s. Boomers were a massive generation that grew up together and shared a common experience, and they still influence our culture today.
Because so many couples were starting families, they wanted to seek safe and affordable housing outside of the cities that were still a commutable distance from their jobs.
And thus the suburbs were formed.
The growth of suburbs helped define the decade and the culture of the 50s as people resulted to conformity.
If you're not aware of ticky-tacky boxes, get to know them ASAP. Many suburbs were filled with mass-produced, cookie-cutter houses, Levittown being a prime example.
And since veterans were offered affordable mortgages, they purchased suburban homes more often.
Another less talked about, but still important reason for suburban growth was white flight. White families tended to flee racially mixed urban areas in favor of homogeneous white communities in the suburbs.
Believe it or not, this still happens all too often today. Another bigger migration was the move to the Sun Belt for military manufacturing jobs in cities such as Houston, Miami, and Los Angeles.
Ah yes, but how would families travel such long distances to their new homes?
The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 was probably President Eisenhower's most permanent legacy. Under it, 42,000 miles of highway linking all of the nation's major cities were built.
This created jobs in construction, promoted the trucking industry, accelerated the growth of suburbs, and contributed to a more homogeneous national identity. On the other hand, it hurt the railroad industry and the environment.
It also meant that less attention was paid to public transportation, which the poor and the elderly depended on to get around.
If you did drive a car, you were thriving. The automobile industry was booming because of the increased steel production from, you guessed it, the war, along with the construction of highways.
Overall, the standard of living was higher than ever before. Consumerism was at its zenith, with new appliances being advertised constantly over TV and radio.
Because of the decade's prosperity, Eisenhower's economic policies are generally considered the most successful of the modern presidents. There were small surpluses 3 times over his 8 years, but deficits fell consistently. Alright, that's all for today on the state of economy in the 1950s.
Good luck on that exam in May, and remember that a number doesn't define you.